Hey, it's Mariana, and thank you for joining me on the Commitment to Growth podcast, a platform dedicated to helping you build resilience for lifelong momentum. We chat about healing, mindset development, and how to live in your authentic truth, because often it's not our problems that cause our dissatisfaction, but everything around them that we haven't yet addressed. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get into this week's conversation. Back to the Commitment to Growth podcast, everybody. If you're new, welcome. And if you're not new, welcome back. It is so lovely to be here with you today for the second official round of the Commitment to Growth podcast monthly Q&A. And can I just say, wow, how philosophical the questions got this round. Like, we've got a little variety of everything. So I am super excited to give them a shot. And everything that we talk about here, whether it's philosophical or it takes a certain approach, I will always tie it back to resilience and how to use that to cultivate resilience in your life. So I'm really excited to show you how I do this and for the takeaways that are going to be taken away from this presentation. I am finally home after being away on travel for 2 months. If you haven't yet listened to my latest episode before this one called I Left Everything to Travel for 2 months, I talk about my journey over the past 8 weeks where I was traveling South America and then Mexico and then Los Angeles for a super special conference in Los Angeles on podcasting. And I connected with the most incredible people. I accidentally met two of my idols, Lewis Howes and Marta Igareda, and I talked to them both. They are actually engaged, and part of the reason that I got into this incredible world of podcasting and sharing my voice on here. And the next day, I'm going to tell you this really quick story because I met another one of my idols of all time, Lisa Bilyeu. If you don't know who she is the host of Women of Impact podcast, and she has been one of my number one inspirations for as long as I can remember, as far back as when I got into the world of personal growth and development, probably back in like 2019 or 2020. And so I'm entering the JW Marriott in Los Angeles, which is where the podcast movement conference was. And I happened to pass by this one presentation room. Now, I didn't know she was there because essentially what happens is that at this event, you purchase your ticket based on where you are in the industry. If you were just starting out in podcasting, you had a specific ticket instead of other people who were just getting into podcasting who had a different ticket, the beginner track it was called. So I guess she was in the beginner track because this particular talk was for that collective of individuals. But I didn't know she was presenting. So I walk past the room where she was talking and I hear her voice and I'm like, is that Lisa Bilyeu? I peek back, I look into the room. Sure enough, it was. I look at the girl who was watching the door and I'm like, is that Lisa Bilyeu? She says, yeah. Looks at me with these weird eyes. She definitely didn't know who she was or that I was one of her biggest fans. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I snuck into this room. I sat down halfway, like almost probably 5 minutes before she was done giving her presentation on believing in oneself and how to make it in the industry when you have every odd against you. And oh my gosh, she finishes the talk like the powerful self that she is. She then comes off the stage and prepares to take pictures and answer some of our questions. Of course, I did end up getting a picture with her, which is just amazing. I cannot wait to print it and put it on my wall. Honestly, I was just so overjoyed. And then let me tell you what happened next. And I just want to emphasize this story because I just think that it's so important as it relates to what can happen when you go after your dreams, what can happen when you take a leap in the direction of the things you desire and the choices you make to put yourself in front of the people that can help you make from your opportunities the dreams and the outcomes that you want. So Lisa, we all take pictures with her and she says, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm running out of time. I have to go to a meeting. But if some of you still have questions, I propose that we meet in the lobby of the hotel at 12 and we can have a couple minutes together and I can answer some of your questions. Fantastic. Out of the like probably 30 people that were in that talk, and not everybody took pictures, keep in mind, but of the people that did, only 6 of us women met in the lobby of that hotel and waited for her at 12 p.m. And sure enough, at 12 p.m., she came down, addressed each of us personally. She said she loved what I did. I told her about commitment to growth. And then she gave us another talk on self-empowerment and making it in the industry and how to stay on your dreams and let go of the chatter and overcome the noise. And that was Lisa Bilyeu addressing 6 of us personally. An experience of a lifetime, an experience that I did not think I was going to get being at that event. So all this to say, take that as an example of what can happen when you choose to go forth in the direction of your dreams by taking chances on which you don't know if you're going to have a return or not. I went to that conference not knowing if I was going to, I didn't even know that I was going to meet her or Lewis House or Marta. That wasn't even the point. But I did. And that only came from going all in, not knowing what I was going to get out of that conference, but deciding that the only way that I was going to leverage that opportunity was by making the choice to put myself out there, to talk to people when I was nervous, to seek out the people that stood out to me in those presentations, etc., etc. You have the same capacity to do that same thing for your dreams, and you never ever know who's going to address you personally, who's going to seek you out, who's going to come into your life, because now I have contacts and connections from that conference that I never would have imagined I would have gotten in a million years, and probably would not have had I not taken that leap. So that's your pep talk to start today's conversation. Oh my gosh, I'm just still so overjoyed that I met all those incredible people. Now, if this is your first time joining us for the monthly Q&A, let me explain to you what it is, how we do so around here. So this is a monthly tradition that I started only last month here on the Commitment to Growth podcast. And essentially the last Thursday of every month, now this one was a little bit late because I was at the conference, but I still did it. I put up a little question box on my Instagram stories. If you're not following me on Instagram, it's at Commitment to Grow, so you can participate next month. Basically, I put up that question box on the last Thursday of every month, and the first 6 to 10 submissions get answered on the show. Now, you can state whether you want your submission to be anonymous or whether you'd like your name tied to your question. Either is totally, totally fine. But the point here is to help you get any of your burning questions answered. If you're struggling in an area of your life where you want to level up, or you just aren't quite sure what next steps to take, this is a place for you to come and ask, and for me to just give you that extra hand in hopefully elevating you towards where you want to be. Now, the past 2 months, the Q&As have been unthemed, but I have decided that moving forward for the month of April, it's the start of April when you're listening to this, so at the end of April, the theme we're going to be doing for this month's Q&A is going to be healing the inner people pleaser. So keep your eyes out. If you're listening to this at the beginning of April 2024, keep your eyes out for the end of April 2024 so that you can submit your questions about how to heal your inner people pleaser, healing your fear of judgment from other people, because I just think it gives the questions a little bit more of a chance to be directed in you, and they're not so vague and it's not so open-ended that it's a little bit overwhelming. So keep your eyes out for that question submission. I am super, super excited. The questions this month got a little philosophical, as I mentioned, and they really are all over the place. Some are more personal, some are more kind of specific to a particular example, and then some are just straight up. Like, I can tell some of you have been dabbling in existentialism, and that's totally fine. So have I, but wow, clearly some of you are staying up thinking about things that I hope aren't robbing you of sleep. But I am excited to give it a shot and to see how I can take your questions and angle them in a way that provides you tips and practices on cultivating resilience in your life, because that is the goal of what we do here at Commitment to Growth, Resilience Coaching. So Let's start with the first question here. And this one is smack dab about resilience. One of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is the concept of habit sticking and habit forming. So let's give it a shot here. This submission is from Kimberly, and it says, I am having a really hard time making going to the gym a habit that sticks. I know it's good for my health and I know I need to do it, but that doesn't seem to be enough to get me to leave my house. What advice would you have for cultivating a habit that has a lot of friction? I hear you, sister. This is so common. And I think it's something that we can all say we struggle with, whether we've been going to the gym for 15 years or 15 days. That friction to do something that you know is good for you but requires that effort is so real. So I just want to first validate that and to just remind you that you're not alone in this. Even I still struggle with this on days where I just don't want to get out of bed and it's gloomy outside, and the situational factors that put us in a state of being less able to do the things that we need to do. So I have a lot that I could say on this because the science of resilience in habit formation is so abundant right now, and it's emerging, and it's really exciting stuff, and it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, as I mentioned. So the first thing I want to state here is that it's important to remember that right now this is a situation where we are trying to break the habit of not going to the gym, because odds are, and I'm going to make the assumption that if you just started out on your journey of going to the gym, or maybe you're just making this a regular part of your routine, it isn't something that is habitual to you, not something that's normal to you. But the thing is, you can't extinguish a habit. You can't just turn that habit of not going to the gym off, because that routine, that familiarity of not going to the gym is tied in your neural circuits of your brain. Your brain is used to not doing that as a regular part of its day. So because of that, we have to create new neural circuits, new habits around going to the gym. Now, one of the most powerful and influential people in the world of habit formation, habit creation is Charles Duhigg. I highly, highly recommend checking out his book, The Power of Habit, if you haven't already, because it's completely life-changing. And one of the things that he mentions, of the many, many, is that you have to change the routine that reinforces your habit of staying at home versus going to the gym. What is involved in that routine is usually the cue that triggers the habit that you're trying to extinguish. And what reinforces you doing that thing is the reward that you perceive is tied to, in this case, not going to the gym. So my advice to you would be, depending on whether you're going to the gym in the afternoon or first thing in the morning, what is the trigger that causes you to not go to the gym, or to start thinking, oh, I don't want to go to the gym? That's the first thing. Because from there, we can understand what is tripping your brain into making excuses for why it doesn't want to go to the gym, or why it shouldn't, or what better things you have to do. It oftentimes has to do, in this case, I think, as somebody in resilience coaching, but also as a personal trainer that has worked with clients with a very similar issue, a lot of the time it's that we make it really hard for ourselves to get out the door. It's not that our door is far away, and it's not that our car might be far away. It might be in our garage or just outside of our door. But what I mean by that is, think of all the steps that you have to take before you even get out the door to go to the gym. You have to put your workout clothes on. You have to put your workout shoes on. You have to do your hair. You have to drink water. Hopefully you're having a snack if you're lifting heavy or just lifting at all. Please eat before your workouts. You have to drink water, brush your teeth, maybe wash your face, all of those steps. So now, odds are that your brain is thinking about, okay, I gotta put on my workout clothes, I have to pick what shoes to wear, I have to do my hair, gotta this and that. And because of that, it's saying, oh, overload, this is way too much work. So The first step is, how are you bridging the gap between your decision to do something and the act of doing it? And how are you making that gap smaller? Are you putting your clothes out the night before? Are you preparing your pre-workout snack and your drink the night before or a couple hours before your workout, so that when the alarm goes off and it's time to go, it's time to go? And by the time it's time to go, you already reduce the number of steps that you have to take in that direction. Okay? That would be my first advice to you, is understand that as human beings, we are naturally adept at exerting minimal effort, because that's how we survive. It's how we cultivate enough energy to survive. But in this case, you have to ask yourself, okay, knowing that, how can I leverage my knowledge of my innate and primal humanity and make this easier on myself? The second thing that I'll say to that is, and this is a really big key point in Charles's research as well, is that we have to understand what reward your brain is seeking in staying home versus going to the gym. What is it about staying at home that is more appealing to you than the reward that you could possibly get from going to the gym? Is it that you'd rather look at your phone? Is it that you are perhaps afraid of seeing yourself work out or in the mirror or compare yourself to others, so staying at home feels safer? What is the thing that outweighs the reward of staying home versus going to the gym? And from that, you have to frame a reward in your mind when you think about going to the gym that feels greater than the reward of staying at home. Now, I'm sure for many of us, we could say, well, obviously, like going to the gym, I know that the reward is long-term health, feeling good in my body, feeling good in my skin, looking a certain way maybe, although that shouldn't be the entire goal of working out. Of course, I advocate against that, but you have to choose at the end, even though you can't see, or perhaps right now feel the reward of, I'm going to feel good, I'm going to feel a certain way walking out of the gym. You have to put that reward as higher in your brain than the reward of staying home. And I would say too, spend a lot of time visualizing how you want to feel when you walk out of the gym, so that that becomes a feeling that your brain and your mind craves. Like, think about how good you would feel leaving the gym. Think about how good you would feel lifting weight, finishing a set that felt really difficult. Visualize that, so when the moment comes that trigger occurs where you're going to that mind cycle of, I'm not leaving my house, no freaking way, it's so much more comfortable here, that feeling arises in the back of your mind and your subconscious because you've rehearsed it, and you can get excited about it enough to help you ditch your apprehension for going to the gym so you can get out the door. I hope that helps. Habit sticking and habit formation is a huge aspect of resilience and cultivating that perseverance in our lives. So I highly, highly recommend The Power of Habit. It's a fantastic resource. Question number 2. By the way, I went with 6 questions versus 10 this week because they were getting a little bit elaborate. So I figured that it might be a little bit nicer to have a few less this month, and then the episode doesn't get too long. So, question number 2. This one is from Jennifer, and it says, I love that you talk about self-alignment a lot as a component of resilience. As someone who is really struggling with tuning into what I want, what's the first step in trusting my inner voice? First of all, thank you so much for touching on the self-alignment point. Yes, it is a huge, huge aspect of how we are able to cultivate resilience in our lives, because if we aren't making decisions that are in line with our values, and we are always, always going to be in a state of conflict in our internal brain. I could get into psychology of that, but to spare you the dialogue, We need to live from our value systems, and we have to live from the things that fill us. And the most surefire way of doing that is learning how to trust our inner voice. So I love this is a question that was asked. Thank you, Jennifer. I would say that the first step in trusting your inner voice lies in asking yourself, what is stopping you from trusting it right now? Because one of the biggest reasons why people don't live in alignment with themselves, and particularly women in this case, is because we've been given a reason to not trust ourselves. And that can come from life experience. Perhaps in the past we trusted someone that we shouldn't have trusted, and therefore we deemed ourselves not able to cast accurate judgment on other people. Perhaps we ate a food that we shouldn't have eaten, and then we got sick. So we're like, I can't judge. I don't trust myself to pick what food I should be eating, right? It can come from those life experiences where we cast our abilities on the outcome of those situations, but also a lot of it has to do with societal narratives, right? Particularly as women, we are told that we are very emotional and that we shouldn't listen to our emotions because we make wrong decisions when we lead from emotion. I know that was something that I have really, really struggled with in the past, is sifting through that narrative enough to understand what my emotions are telling me and how I can leverage what they're telling me to get to the right decision. Not to mention, we're pulled in so many directions of what success looks like, what happiness looks like, what fulfillment looks like, from what we see on social media or what we're told from society is success. In Western society, it really has to do with being a millionaire, having the car, having the house, being a successful business owner. So the first thing that you really have to do is address how those narratives are seeping into your relationship with that voice. When you put yourself in a position to listen to that voice, what is it saying? And as soon as you hear what it says, what's the first thing you say back to it? I'll tell you what, a lot of times our first go-to comment to make to that voice is, that can't be it. I can't possibly want that. I can't possibly have that. And because of that, we cast it away. We silence it. We stop listening to it. What that leads to is long-term self-abandonment, and what that leads to is long-term not knowing of self. And that can be super harmful because now you're floating in this state of going with what the flow says, going with what people say, tying your identity to other people, deriving happiness from what other people are telling you should make you happy. So my suggestion to you would be, ask yourself, what is holding you back from listening to that voice? And what reason have you given yourself for not trusting in what it says? If it has to do with a past situation where somebody betrayed you or lied to you and you gave them the benefit of the doubt, or you trusted them, forgive yourself. A lot of that ability to trust that voice starts with self-forgiveness. But it also begins with accepting the delusionality of our dreams. Something that Lisa said in that conversation that I just spoke to you all about, she said, you have to be delusional about the things that you desire. And that requires trusting that what you desire is what's meant for you. Trusting that what you desire is worthy of having. So once you do that process of what's stopping me from trusting myself, what narratives are perhaps leading me away from this voice, my next question to you would be, what is it that you desire that you don't think you can have? Because in that lies the limiting beliefs that you're placing on yourself. And for that, I highly, highly recommend checking out my free 30-minute masterclass. It's called Welcome to Your Evolution, and it's all about tapping into your desires and how to do that from a place of feeling and emotion, and using that to visualize effectively in a way that you can clearly map out what it is exactly that you desire and how to get it. I highly recommend it. It's only 30 minutes and it has a follow along workbook. So I will link in the show notes how you can get access to that masterclass, but it is going to be your best friend in this situation. It will transform your world in just 30 minutes. I promise. So thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a wonderful, wonderful question. On to the third one here. This one is from Brayden, and the question is, what are some tips on claiming one's wandering mind that's quickly jumping from place to place? I love this question because I think that this is something that is also super tied to resilience, in that the more that our attention is pulled in different directions, the less resilience we have to get through our day, to focus on the things that really deserve our attention, that need our attention. And therefore, it also pulls away from our capacity to turn our attention, our effort, and our energy back onto ourselves. And I think this is super important because we live in a society right now that naturally pulls our attention in so many places. We live in constant, constant noise. Our phones are always giving us a reason to turn our attention away from whatever we're doing, from the people, from our work, from our studies, traffic, notifications, emails, our own families, our own loved ones, right? We always have our attention in separate places, but I think the real skill in this world full of noise is understanding. And I wrote a poem about this a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember the exact line I used, but it was something along the lines of, I understand now that silence is not the absence of words, but rather choosing to listen against the noise of my own mind. I think that's what it was that I wrote. And it just came to me. I was like sitting in the middle of this coffee shop where it was super, super noisy. And I was like, I've never felt more at peace and more in silence in a long time, because I was choosing to just observe. Different situation, but what I want to get at with that is that we have to sift through the narratives in our mind that are telling us where our attention needs to be for long enough to understand where we think our attention needs to be versus where it actually needs to be at a given moment. So for example, say you're sitting at your desk and you're about to get into a really, really deep study flow, or you have to bang out a work project. And then all of a sudden your mind goes, oh, but what if my friend responded to my DM that I sent them? What if they finally saw that really funny meme I sent them? Your brain is craving that dopamine hit from opening the Instagram app or from opening TikTok or X, whatever you use. That is an example of where you can learn to listen against the noise of your own mind and say, no, that's not really important right now. I need to return to the present. And it's obviously a very difficult task to solidify, because you're going to get that dopamine hit when you open the Instagram app. But the more you practice sitting in the discomfort of, I want to do something that I know I don't need to do for the pleasure of it and for the addiction of that dopamine hit, the greater your capacity will be for delayed gratification, which is one of the concepts that I teach in my coaching practice, is that a lot of times we think that we are lazy and that we aren't resilient people, but in reality, we live in a world that embraces such instant gratification that we have lost our propensity to embrace delayed gratification. And a lot of times that's what makes us impatient. That's what makes us frustrated. That's what makes us discouraged about our studying, our work, how long certain things are taking, because we have a very skewed perception of how long it actually takes to succeed at things, how long it actually takes to finish things and see things through. One other piece of insight that I'll give you on this topic is, one thing that I have found super, super helpful is setting reminders on my phone that go off every couple of hours that remind me to come back to the present moment. So I have a reminder at 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. No, 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 6 p.m. 3 times a day that says, where is your head at right now? I think the one at 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. say that, and the one at 9 a.m. says, take a moment to visualize your higher self. Those 3 reminders go off every single day, and what that does is it helps me center myself back to the present moment, because they go off on my laptop and they go off on my phone as well. So if I'm working and I'm all over the place with my head, that reminder just comes on and I'm like, where actually is my head at right now? Where are my thoughts? Where am I doing this work from? What place internally am I working from? Am I looking for a reward? Is this a transactional task that I have suddenly created? How can I honor my higher self in this moment by how I approach this task? And how can I center myself back into the present moment? Sometimes I really have to take a couple minutes to just do some box breathing, to just get up and get a drink of water or move my body so that I can recenter amidst the anxiety and the stress of multitasking. But because it's so easy to wrap yourself up in that groove of working, multitasking, having those reminders is super helpful in centering me and reminding me that you are where you need to be right now. So I highly recommend that you do the same. If you can do it with alarms or reminders on your phone, on the Reminders app, it's a fantastic, fantastic little tool to use. So thank you for your submission, Brayden. That was a wonderful question. Now on to something slightly more philosophical, folks. This one is quite the question. Holy smokes. Okay. Whew. Let's get warmed up here. Okay. The question is, perception or perceptive? What's more important? This is an anonymous submission. It's difficult to say which one's more important, because I think it gets at 2 different things. I think our perception can be largely influenced by factors outside of ourselves. What I mean by that is our subconscious mind, our past experiences and their role in our neurobiology and our neuropsychology, and our beliefs. All those things together work to build our perception. Our perception is how we make assumptions or narratives about the world in front of us and what's happening in front of us. And I think that is where a lot of us struggle, is in that we aren't aware enough of the lens through which we are seeing our life to understand how we're living it, right? Because, for example, if you've been, and I always return to this example because I think it's just easy and it's easy to digest. If you've been cheated on before, and then you make the choice to go on a date, however long after that experience, you are likely judging that person by their propensity to do the same thing to you, because you know that previous event caused you pain. So you might ask them questions to reveal if they're seeing somebody else, or if they've ever cheated before, or you might have your wall up on that person before you even really get to know them, because you've already assigned them as capable of hurting you and on doing the same thing that the previous person did. And because of that, your perception of that person might be skewed, because depending on what they say they say something that slightly confirms your nudge that they could be a cheater, but doesn't even come close, or your brain misinterprets that in an effort to confirm that belief. Now you have a very different perception of that person. That's an example where In that case, if that person wasn't aware of those subconscious narratives, of those subconscious beliefs, how they're going to influence their perception of that person. Now, perceptive, on the other hand, I think is our capacity to read between the lines in a situation. It's how we open ourselves up to seeing and experiencing the world irrespective of our perceptions. Oof. There we go. How's this philosophy 101 for you all right there? No. What I mean by that is, I think when you are a perceptive person, when you cultivate the capacity to be perceptive, you are in a place where you take your understanding of the world, your understanding of yourself, in a way that opens you up to reading situations differently, to noticing things about people differently, to overall putting you in a place to take the world in a more conscious, informed, empathetic way. For example, say you yourself are someone who hides your feelings away, and you've over time learned how that manifests itself. You pull away from the group physically, you put yourself in a different room, maybe you get quiet, maybe you brush things off, you tiptoe around certain questions. When you have that innate self-awareness and you've healed through that because you've done the conscious work to pick up that trigger and break the pattern from it manifesting itself further, you might be able to be perceptive when somebody else enacts that pattern. When somebody else is eliciting similar behaviors or behaviors that might hint at something that you have healed or worked through within yourself. That is your capacity to be perceptive to somebody's experience and how it might be highlighting their inner world. My particular take on that question. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what's more important because I think they're two different things. But I do think, and I'll say this, it is very important to understand how our perceptions are hindering or enhancing our perceptiveness. When you become aware of how you are taking in the world based on your past experiences and your projection onto the world, you are more able to open yourself up in a way that makes you more perceptive of what's actually going on or what is actually at stake in a certain situation, or how you actually like or dislike a certain person. So that's my take on that very philosophical question. Thank you to the person that submitted that. That's such a wonderful piece of reflection. Wow. Number 4, also quite interesting, another anonymous submission. Once you get to where you want to be, then what? Oh, some of you are staying up staring at your ceiling and it shows. Like, you are up at 2 a.m. being like, what is life? We are on a floating rock. No. Please don't do that. I think that this can be answered simply, and I think that that has to do with, are you seeing the events in your life as finish lines? Think about when you have stepped into a new environment, a new position at work, a new relationship that you perhaps had always dreamed of up until that point. Have you sat there and been like, oh, that's it, I finally got this thing, right? Or has receiving that thing presented new challenges, presented new requirements for you to live up to the needs of that new situation, of that new environment? Because really, I think this question has to do with, once again, our perception of where we need to be and how that new place in our lives influences our future. What I mean by that is, are you looking at life as a sequence of steps or as a journey as a whole? Because you're always going to be presented with challenges, even when you get to where you want to be. The only reason you get to where you want to be is because you've put yourself in that place, but also because you're ready to receive the challenges that life is going to put in front of you that are associated with that new identity, with that new position, with that new responsibility. What is stopping you from opening yourself up to a vision of life as a collection of moments, as one continuous path, river, not to get too poetic, but this is very interesting. I would love to know where your head is at when you asked this question, because I just don't think that life is a sequence of goals met and then onto the other, onto the other, onto the other. Our human psychology makes it so, because we're always chasing the next best thing, the next thing that's going to make us feel even more rewarded and more pleasurable. But I don't think we ever arrive somewhere and that's it. We're always arriving in life. We're always, always, always reaching new starting lines, even when they symbolize the finish line of the previous chapter in our lives. So I encourage you to think about how you're seeing the events in your life symbolically in that regard. Thank you for that submission. Number 5. This one is from Alan, and the question says, what's the difference between being smart and being right, and how do we falsely apply that in our lives? I love this question, and I think that this is so pertinent, particularly in our relationships with our parents. And I think you're about to know what I mean when I get into this. So I think the difference between being smart and being right. Being smart means that you recognize that you don't always have to be right to be smart. Mic drop. What I mean by that is, why have we tied being right to being smart? Knowledge is constantly evolving. Our understanding of things is constantly evolving. Why? And I think that this ties back to that previous question. Why do we see the things in our life as constant, as set points, as non-changing? There might be certain fundamental laws of the universe that are constants. The speed of light, gravity, I don't know. I don't know what Newton was doing when he came up with those numbers, but or Einstein as well. But I think we derive a lot of our worth and a lot of our self-trust and a lot of our credibility in the eyes of others from always having to be right. But this is what's very interesting, and I think that this is something that I have come up against as a life coach. In the coaching world and in the world of therapy, dare I say, it's very easy to wrap yourself up in trying to tell somebody exactly why they feel a certain way or they are experiencing a certain thing. But I could have a very different perception to somebody else, another coach who is assessing the same client differently. Now, that's not to say that either of us are wrong, because at the end of the day, we synthesize from our training, from our observations, a certain prediction, a certain educated prediction as to the trials and tribulations of that person and how they're making them feel a certain way. At the end of the day, I don't think it has anything to do with who's right or wrong. At the end, it's what ends up serving the client better. But I want to extract that example and use it to back this question, in that there are situations in which we are all going to have different perceptions of the world, a person, a situation, an equation. And why not open yourself up to growing your knowledge, to growing your intelligence through not seeking to be right, but rather seeking self-expansion? How much more fulfilled, how much more powerful do we feel when we gain new knowledge that interests us, that opens up our world in a different way? There's a lot of ego involved in the need to be right, because when somebody cannot accept not being right, it usually has something to do with their need for control, with their need for being seen a certain way by other people, and how that ties to their insecurities. So if you have that need to be right, I encourage you to ask yourself where that need is coming from. It's okay if it's coming from your ego. It's okay if it's a protection mechanism. But the point here is, how is that need and that need for control stopping you from expanding your worldview, from learning from other people, from seeing a different angle to a situation that could make you a better person, make you a more knowledgeable person? I think we falsely associate those two terms when we tell ourselves that being smart means that we have to be right. I think that being smart means that you let go of the need to be right, in a way of accepting that life is in constant flux, as well as our understanding of the world, as well as our understanding of other people. And that involves relinquishing a lot of need for control and a lot of our need to shape our perception of ourselves in the eyes of others a certain way. So ask yourself, if you experience that, where that need is coming from and what part of you needs a lot of love in healing that need. Thank you again, Alan, for that submission. That was a wonderful, wonderful question. And last but not least, we kept it to 6 this round. This is a more personal submission. I'm just gotta say, I love it, love it, love it when you folks ask me questions on personal stories of mine and how I've gone through them, or my personal experience through them. I love answering them. Please know that that's never off the table, because surely I'm not the only one, as you're about to see, that goes through certain life experiences. And if they help you, that is the work that I came here to do. So the question is a submission from Jimena, and it says, what was it like for you choosing to walk away from your dream of going into medicine last year? I am facing a similar situation right now, and I am not sure how to move forward. What suggestions would you have for someone who is facing a dead end in life? Again, thank you so much for just being here for long enough to know that part of my story. I really, really appreciate that. For those of you who it might be your first time here, some context. Just almost a year ago, this April, I finished my university studies in kinesiology with the goal of going into medicine as a career. That had been a dream for mine for about 12 years of my life. I did the pre-med path. I did everything. I volunteered. I worked. I did everything to make that application be what it needed to be to put me in front of the right people. I was rejected from medical school once, 2 years ago, and decided that last year I would write my entrance exam in the summer, apply for the fall, and go in hopefully this coming September of 2024. I leave school, I start working at a private health clinic, and for multiple reasons, with which I will not bore you in this conversation, you can listen to other podcast episodes if you want to find out why. Um, I decided that the medical route would not fulfill the purpose that I wanted to fulfill in my life. My vision of health and health intervention was not in alignment with the systems that we have in place. And because of that, I pivoted to life coaching because I told myself, well, I still have that same purpose. I still have that same desire to contribute to the world in a certain way. So, how can I fulfill the same how? Sorry, one more time. How can I fulfill the same why using a different how? How can I fulfill the same why with a different how? And I have never looked back. By the way, I love what I do now, and I know it's exactly what I'm meant to be doing. But because of how powerful asking myself that question was, I would encourage you to ask yourself the exact same thing. Depending on what your end goal was before, what is the desire behind that end goal? What was fueling your path towards getting that thing? Now, this is important because this begs the question about whether our goals are ours or somebody else's. And I won't get too much into that, but I think this is really important because sometimes when we don't get the things we thought we wanted, it's an opportunity for us to reflect on why we wanted them in the first place. The universe is always, always, always pointing you in the direction of your true desires. And sometimes we might not be exposed to enough situations or examples to understand how we can fulfill those desires. And so we go into life and into pursuits with a certain idea of what that desire has to manifest itself as. But in my case, for example, I had decided on psychiatry actually as a specialty before I even got into medical school. I knew that's the direction that I wanted to take because I wanted to work in mental health. I wanted to help people who were hopeless in life, who needed help seeking direction in their lives. And I thought psychiatry was the way to do it in the most effective and powerful way because of the weight that I had put on holding a medical degree. Yet now, I'm doing the exact same thing differently and in a way that is way more authentic, valuable, and expressive to me. I've built a brand around it. I've come up with certain approaches from the evidence-based tools that I learned in life coaching school and in my own learning and in my own degree that are allowing me to fulfill that why. So ask yourself, what is your purpose? What is driving your journey towards seeking that thing? And what are you telling yourself is the way that you need to fulfill it? Can you detach yourself for long enough from that idea to open yourself up to new pathways that will get you to the same destination? And this requires relinquishing a lot of control. I will say the first 2 months of going through that little existential crisis and deciding that I was going to cancel my medical school entrance exam were filled with so much guilt. Guilt that came from telling myself that if I didn't finish what I set out to do, I was a quitter, I was a loser, I had no grit, I had no discipline. And yet, now I'm at a place where I don't see myself doing literally anything else with my life because I'm so, so happy. But that only came from releasing control for long enough to open myself up to new opportunities. And that wasn't easy. In the moment that I was going through life coaching school, I couldn't stop thinking, like, am I taking the easy path? Am I giving up too quickly? Am I this? Am I that? But you have to allow yourself in this space to gravitate towards things that you have curiosity for, that you have an inkling for, that you feel a certain way about. You want to explore them, you want to experience them. Give yourself this time to just be, to just be receptive, to not do as much as you allow. Do not do as much as you allow life to place in your path in this season. Because in allowance, you are open. And when you are open, life gives you the answer to why you are where you are right now. And to that last part of your question, when you're facing a dead end in life, is this a dead end? Or is this actually the open door you've been waiting for? I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for your submissions this month, everybody. Once again, if you enjoyed that and you got value out of it, share this episode with somebody who you feel needs to hear it. If one of your friends that have been having similar questions or struggles in life, send it to them so that it helps them as well. If you enjoyed it and you want to submit a question for the end of April, remember that the theme will be healing the inner people pleaser. So get your questions in. I cannot wait to answer that round. It's one of my just most adored topics in the world of resilience as well. If you resonated with any of the things discussed in this episode because you're trying to level up in life or you're having thoughts and questions about that similar topic, I am open for one-on-one coaching right now, and spots are going to go quickly because I am working on some projects on the side that I can't quite tell you about yet. But if you are curious in coaching with me personally, check the show notes for a link to send me a question form from my website, or you can book a discovery call directly. I'll have a link below for that as well. Just 30 minutes of us getting to know each other and probably laughing because I like to laugh a lot. And if you want to stay updated on future episodes of the podcast or just updates about commitment to growth resilience coaching in general, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. It's at commitment to growth on both channels, and let's stay connected. Let me know if you want to be a guest on the podcast because I am accepting those as well right now, or if you have any questions about resilience or life in general. Happy to chat on DMs. Always, always, always. So with that, thank you for tuning into this week's conversation, and I will see you in the next round.